toilet?
No one.
All right. Good morning, Gator Nation. Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online here, joined as always by Zach Alberverdi, also of Gators Online. This is the Gators Online show. We do it weekly, sometimes twice a week if we feel like it. And we're going to try to have some fun today. We're going to, one of the big topics is, did Florida win or lose in the transfer portal? So we're going to break it down by position, assessing UF's transfer additions and losses. But before we get to that, we're going to talk to Zach about his meetup with new Florida Gators football coach John Summerall last weekend. And really, it was the first time John Summerall had spoken to the media in one big setting since the day Florida brought him in for his introductory press conference. So we'll do that first, and then we'll wrap things up by talking a little UF hoops. That was a weird week of UF basketball, Zach.
Yeah, it was.
We talk about the lows and the highs. But first of all, Zach, how you doing, buddy? Everything good? Staying warm?
Well, I am, man. I hope everybody's out there staying warm. We got it easy in Florida, Keith.
Yes, we do. You look at that map. I think the funniest thing I saw maybe all week was a picture of weather map, and the cold front coming through, and it said teens, 20s. And then at Tallahassee, it said 70s. And somebody's tweet was, that hot seat in Tallahassee is so warm that it basically was able to thwart the cold front, But anyway.
That's great.
All right, so John Summerall, we were both at his introductory press conference, and back in December, was it the first day of December? It was right around there, yeah. And so we got to really just watch him that one time, and then he's been on the move the last several weeks. I mean, trying to coach two teams, coach Tulane in a bowl game, help Florida put the finishing touches on the recruiting class, work the transfer portal, keep guys from leaving, go grab other guys, do all this stuff. So at the basketball game last weekend, there was a media session, a media interaction with John Summerall. And Zach, what were some of your takeaways from that? You got a lot of questions in. You got a lot of time with John. What did you think? What were your impressions?
Well, first of all, I thought he did a good job addressing the crowd. I mean, I know that should be a layup for coaches, but just I think given the need, I think, for energy that fans wanted to feel from their head coach, I thought he brought it, and I thought it was the right messaging. I thought that it was received well, and I give him credit for mixing it up with the students and kind of going all around the arena and not just being in one place. He really wanted to get a feel of the O-Dome, so that was cool. And look, I've mentioned this before, but I mean I wrote about it. But he put this off. He could have done this weeks ago for Florida, Georgia. He had to go out and see Jaden Woods. He also had an opportunity to come for Florida, Tennessee, but that was a noon game, and the Gators were having junior day. So he wasn't going to get pulled away from that. They also had a junior day for the Auburn game, and he just it was at 4 p.m. So by the end of the day, that he was able to come meet with the fans, meet with the media, and it was good to hear from him. He had a scrum at halftime. And ran through a lot of things. He talked about the Fab Five. But, the one thing that came out of that presser certainly is the logo stuff. I asked him about it because I, like a lot of people, noticed that Florida wasn't wearing logos in workouts. And he gave his answer, Keith. I thought it was great and insightful. And just, look, man, somebody wants to come in and do something different. That's always notable, and we're obviously going to ask about it and write about it. I thought it was well received. I didn't see anybody within the program or any former players say anything negative about it. There were some comments that people blew back on, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are, look, we all have friends that you and I both went to UF. You and I both grew up in the Gainesville area. Almost everybody we know is somehow tied to UF. Either they went there, they worked there, they grew up a fan of there. Maybe they went to another school. Some of the biggest Gator fans I know just had to go to an Ivy League school because mom and dad made them go, but they're Gator fans. So we're in that whole Gator fan, Gator Nation world. And I think a lot of those people, they like that. They want the patch to mean something. And I know we started this chatter last fall with Billy Gonzalez saying play for the patch and all that stuff. But to the fans, I think they want it to mean something. And in one way to make the players make it mean something to them is to make them have to earn it, right? Make them have to earn it. So I think that's smart. I mean, Urban Meyer did something similar to that back in the day. And we know that Urban Meyer Well, he's certainly getting a lot of involvement with the Gator program these days, Zach. And we know he talks to John Summerall, has spoken, and we don't know how many times. And that's right out of his playbook. And so it's psychological warfare here too. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that. You want guys. So John Summerall, when people talk about him, Zach, they never really talk about X's and O's or any of that. And I'm sure he's great at all that. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he is. What they talk about is that he's a great motivator and he gets kids to play hard for him. And not to say that Florida players didn't play hard the last few years, but there were games where you thought they might have more talent here. So what was the difference when they didn't win? And maybe that can be that X factor. And I think this goes into that. This is also a team bonding and team building experience as well. As more guys get that logo, they're going to be fighting for their brothers so they can get it too. So they're not the last man standing without one. And it all works in concert. It all works together. And I think I wouldn't say it's brilliant, but they're starting from scratch. They're having to break this team down and then they will build it back up. And this isn't coming in and telling everybody they're great and all that. You're going to have to earn it. You want to play for the school, you're going to have to earn it. So Zach, I like it early on. I like the mentality. They need to see that what it's all about. They need to see that everything, even something that shouldn't be taken for granted, something as small as a logo, it's big to all of us, but something to them, I mean, they're getting paid, they've got games, all that, but the logo has to mean something to them too. And they've got to earn every single thing all the way through. You go back to John Wooden when he was the great coach at UCLA basketball. He would start every first practice of every year, Zach. He would just show them how to put their socks on. That's all he did. Building blocks. Sounds stupid, but great coaches swear. It may sound stupid to some of us. It may sound trivial, but great coaches swear some of them subscribe to that theory. You got to start from ground one or ground zero. All right. So I like it.
Well, and two things. One, people were like, well, why is he wearing the logo?
Well, that's true.
he doesn't play. He doesn't play. True. He's not on the team. The script that was taken away on the Gators helmet and then the Gators head, that was taken away for the guys that are going to play. They're going to represent the logo on the field. That are going to win and lose the games. That's what this is for. Number one. The other thing that I saw people say was, oh, well, yeah, they're good enough to earn a scholarship and to get an NIL deal and to get all these amenities, but they can't wear the logo. What a joke. No, that's all the more reason why you should make the logo something special that you earn, because they get the scholarship, because they get an NIL deal, because they get rev share, because they get everything basically given and provided to them. This is one thing that they got to earn. This is one thing that is special and sacred, and you don't just get handed to you. You got to earn it. I mean, and how anybody can think that this is a bad precedent or a negative precedent, I just don't understand it. I guess the third thing is, people say, well, this coach did it or this coach did it, and they weren't successful. Well, Urban Meyer did it. And Billy Donovan did it, and they were successful. So we can pull all these comparisons that you want. At the end of the day, this was meant to shake something up, and I think it's a positive.
Yeah, it was probably needed. And back to Summerall wearing the logo, he's out front and center every day across the country, meeting kids, parents, recruits, their coaches, all that stuff. He's at airports, well, usually private airports, but he's everywhere, right? When they go visit a kid in Dallas, they got to eat lunch somewhere. You want him wearing that logo. And by the way, Zach, this may be something people are going to be like, God, Keith, what an idiot you are. I like the fact that he's wearing that orange top everywhere, and you can plainly see Florida, and you can plainly see that logo, right? I thought that was a mistake. This is something a little small, but I thought it was a mistake that when certain coaches, now that there's some on this staff, but when you wear that black top, that logo is kind of hard to see. It's pretty clear. In every photo that John Summerall's in, he's either in a white shirt or an orange shirt with Florida right here, right? I mean, so you want him having the logo on.
Well, he's contractually obligated to wear the logo too.
Yeah,
that's the other thing we should mention.
But I mean, I like that it's not hidden. You can actually see which team he coaches. You know what I mean? He's actually picking out some good gear, and that's another topic for another show. But when you see him, Phil Troutwine, a lot of these guys out, I think they know what kids like because they're wearing cursive logos, they're wearing retro logos. That orange is popping, right? We're seeing more of the orange than we have in a long long time.
Well, and look, we'll mention Napier hated the orange. He was never going to let Florida wear the orange tops because maybe it reminded him of Clemson.
Well, Spurrier came back. Florida wore orange all through the 80s, and Spurrier got there and said, well, they wore blue when he was there, and then they went more back to the 1960s blue, which is interesting because the stadium, the walls are all orange, but they used to be blue. They were blue. So it was interesting. Florida kind of goes through these cycles. I mean, it's much ado about nothing, but I like the look. I have a lot of people messaging me on Twitter. Where can I get that shirt? Where can I get that jacket? And you're seeing a lot of that again. But anyway, Zach, other takeaways from meeting with John Summerall. What else did he say? I mean, he talked about position battles, coaches. What was the juice?
I think the biggest one, obviously, that he discussed was Aaron Philo and his decision to come to Gainesville. And look, the way that the question was posed to him is why Philo? Like, obviously, there was a lot of quarterbacks in the portal, and there were some other options that ended up in the SEC that you think, hey, maybe Florida could have went after this guy or that guy. So it was good to hear from John about why they felt like he was the one that they wanted to sign and bring in. And certainly the confidence and the history that Buster has with him factored into that. But if you listen to what John had to say, he did his homework on this guy as well. They looked into what he had done at Georgia Tech, and it was clear that they did not want him to leave and intended on him being the starter in 2026. So he also did add, though, that it's a quarterback competition. He likes Tramel Jones, too. So they're, in his words, a long way from making that decision. So that's certainly going to be one of the position battles that take place in the spring and in fall. I'm sure that this is going to carry over into fall camp. It was also good to hear him talk about Dave Caldwell and just how they work together and how involved John still is, even though he has a GM with this setup. But it does take things off of his plate and allow him to just kind of focus on, the top priorities when it comes to transfer portal, high school recruiting. And he also now doesn't have to deal with the negotiation side of things. That can all be the front office with Dave and his staff. So, those were good things to hear. But honestly, Keith, one of the best things was when he was talking about the portal class, or best things, I guess, honest things.
Yeah.
Was he said, I think we had some areas of need that we maybe fulfilled. I think we have some areas of need where we got to figure it out, or we got to figure out where we're at. Clearly saying that there's obviously some spots that he's not completely comfortable yet with, or at least knowing what the Gators are going to do. And we're going to break down that here in a moment. But, he wasn't ready to crown this class and, obviously get too far ahead of himself. Like, it's quite the opposite. He's making these guys earn the logo, and it's going to be an open competition at every position. And I think that's refreshing, and it's going to be good for this team to go through that in the spring.
Interesting. Back to the quarterback, I just want to make one quick point. One of the things when you look through the history of Florida football and you say, all right, I think Florida's won 8 SEC titles officially, and then 3 others years where they finished first but weren't allowed to be crowned champions. I think almost every one of those quarterbacks won a state title in high school. And then you go back. I mean, we know Danny Werfel did. We know Shane Matthews did. We know Chris Leak did. We know Tim Tebow did. We know Rex Grossman did. And so you start looking at that. Well, Aaron Philo won a state title. He won 3 in high school, 2 as a starter. Tramel Jones did not win a state title, but did he elevate his team? Because not everybody can have the players around him to win a state title, Zach, but did he elevate his team? Well, as a junior, his last healthy year, he took his team to the state championship game. Will Griffin, the incoming freshman who ESPN.com says is the most college-ready 2026 quarterback in the country, what did he do last year? Well, he helped lead his team, which probably didn't have as much talent as some of the great teams in Florida, to an 11-2 finish, 37 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he elevated his team. So when you're looking at the quarterback position, you're looking forget about all the other dynamics. I mean, Danny Werfel didn't have John Elway's arm, but Danny Werfel was a winner, and Steve Spurrier recognized that. And so Aaron Philo, Will Griffin, Tramel Jones, they look like guys that are winners. And I should mention Aiden Warner also is on the roster as a quarterback too, and we'll get a look. But, You want guys that can lift you up and other guys want to play with. And we hear early on, by the way, I've heard that Aaron Philo is fitting in well. And this is from a parent of a player on the team, that he's fitting in well. And the other players like him. The other quarterbacks like him. So that's a good first step. All right, Zach, you ready to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, let's dig into this, man. I think this will be a good discussion.
All right. So we're going to assess Florida's transfer portal additions and losses position by position.
How about we do this, Keith? Let's circle back to quarterback at the end.
Okay. Well, what do you want to start with?
Let's start with defense, because I think the quarterback discussion is interesting.
All right, so let me pull up the defense.
We'll tease that one.
Okay. So yeah, that's true. We'd have everybody tune out. They get tired of looking at us. All right. So let's start on the defensive line. Transferred out. It's a pretty big one. Mekhi Barrow transferred in. Oh God, you give me the hard name first here, Zach.
Emmanuel Oyebadayo.
There you go, of Jacksonville State. Hearing so many good things about him. DK Kalu of Baylor and Mason Clinton of Southern Miss, who also has been at in junior college, also was at Mississippi State. And so you lose Barrow, but you're bringing in those three guys. Oyebaja. Pronounce it one more time for me, Zach.
And I don't know if this is pronounced. So this is my guess, but Oyebadayo.
Oyebadayo, 1 year to play. DK Kalu, 2 years to play. Mason Clinton, 2 years to play. Just your general thoughts here, Zach. Assessing UF's transfer additions and losses on the defensive line.
Yeah. So first of all, a couple things on Mekhi Barrow. I would argue that he is probably the biggest loss that Florida had to the portal, just in terms of his position that he plays, and those guys don't grow on trees. So being able to go out and replace him, his body, his frame, his role at nose tackle, it's not easy. Now they got some guys obviously at nose, and maybe some guys that they brought in as well. But I'll say this, like, the second thing on Mekhi Barrow, he has had availability issues, and I'm sure the staff knows that, the new staff. And there were times last year where he was not available, where he was not practicing, and Florida's had to go through it without him already. So they've had to play other guys at nose tackle. They've already been through this. I don't know what his health situation is at this time, but if that was something that is lingering or could flare up again in the future, did that impact Florida's willingness to invest in Mekhi Barrow, given that he got a bag? He got a bag to go to Ole Miss, and apparently it was $1 million bag.
Good bag.
But did Florida, as a program, and maybe with some knowledge of his history, say, you know what, as much as we would love to have him, and as much as he might be our biggest loss that we're losing to the portal, we're not going to go to that price point given his availability history? Maybe that was a decision that was made. So I want to say that off the top, because I think that is probably, if we're going back to John Summerall's comments where he said that they got some areas that they got to figure out, I think this is one of them. Emmanuel Oyebadayo, a big-time signee. He's one of Florida's highest-rated signees, 6'7", 295 pounds. He's going to come in and help you where Caleb Banks was at, and he can play strong side defensive end as well. But he's not necessarily, unless pass rushing down certain packages, like, he's not lining up at nose. So I don't know if Kalu or Clinton, they're going to look to play one of them there, or if it's going to be a situation where they are relying on the guys that they were already having to rely on last year with Mekhi's availability issues, and that was Brendan Bett, Jamari Lyons, Joseph Mbachu can play nose. So they've already got guys there, because that's really what it's about. You lost Mekhi Barrow, so it was like, how are you going to replace him? I don't think that they went out and got a guy necessarily that's going to do it. However, Emmanuel Oyebadayo is ranked 168th nationally in the On3 industry transfer portal rankings. He was one of Florida's top signees. They paid top dollar to get him. They beat Texas A&M to get him. He's one of the best. And I mean, he's a guy that you're going to be able to plug in there, losing what we assume is going to be Brian Taylor, and along with Caleb Banks. Both of those guys were playing the same position. So they get help there. I don't necessarily know that they got the help at nose. So I'd kind of, I don't know how you would – I can't say they upgraded, I guess, at defensive line. I don't necessarily know that they downgraded. It might be a wash because I do think Emmanuel is a big get, but he's not going to play nose.
Yeah. So maybe you lose something at nose in Mekhi Barrow. By the way, Mekhi Barrow's statistics, okay, but it's the position he plays. It's the nose position where you're taking on two blockers almost every play, and that frees up other guys to make plays. So that's one of the reasons why you wouldn't want Emmanuel Oyebajo to play nose. I mean, even if he could, because he's an athletic, twitchy playmaker. Yeah. So you wouldn't necessarily want him taking on. Yeah, you wouldn't want him taking on two blockers. You want him taking on the quarterback's head, right? That's what you want him focused on, stopping guys in the backfield and all that. Zach, he can play edge also, believe it or not. He could play, like you said, strong side defensive end. Some of it's semantics, what you want to call a position, but he can line up outside, and he did a lot of that at Jacksonville State.
Like that F spot.
Florida did have
called it.
Yeah.
Like where Cameron James plays.
Yes, they did have a nose committed, Samu Tuamano-Pepe from Texas A&M.
Good job, let's go.
He was from Baylor. He was from Texas A&M. He was all over. Then he committed to Florida, took a visit to Colorado, and flipped to Colorado. So they had that big body guy in the middle. Yeah, that was
the guy.
Yeah, and that was sort of a disappointing blow, even though, quite frankly, he hadn't really done a whole lot in college. It was more of a projection, a big body.
I think he was more of a depth piece. Like I still think Florida's going to start Brendan Bett or Jamari Lyons or Joseph Mbachu at nose. Like I think the guy that replaces Burrow is probably on the roster.
Yeah, probably. Space eaters, but you got to have those guys too. You got to have space eaters too. But so I agree with you. It's probably a wash. You give up something at nose, but you probably pick something up in a guy. We need to point out, by the way, that Emmanuel Oyebajo, people inside the building, we're hearing nothing but talk about this guy being a physical freak. Zach, you did something on here, his weight training and off season, all that, how he's already opened eyes. And there are people inside that building that think this guy has high round potential in the draft. So we'll see. All right, Zach, next position, edge, transferred out, none. Transferred in, none. But the Gators did graduate George Gums at the Jack edge spot and Tyreek Sapp at the other edge spot. Of course, they also had the big retention. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
Well, and I mean, to me, it's like you lost those two, and then you add the two recruits.
Yeah.
That's where I think you replace those numbers.
Well, you retain Jaden Woods, all SEC freshman pick, who probably, most guys take big jumps in that first year to second year. And his jump is more predictable probably than most because his isn't based on 60 snaps. The guy played a ton of snaps last year. He's got experience. So they won't have to worry about the experience part. He's played in all the battles. He's played in the big games, in the big moments. So he's got that part down. And then you also retained LJ McCray. He's sort of the forgotten guy out there, Zach. All the potential in the world, but hurt last year, missed most of the season, played one game, was hurt, played in a game against, I think, USF, got hurt in that game, and then that was it. That's a former 5-star player. And Florida did retain
Top
him.
10 player.
Yeah, I think there's still a belief. I mean, he's got to be healthy, but I think he showed enough in that first year. And by the way, the Tulane guys that came, John Summerall and those guys, they scouted LJ McCray because he played against them in that bowl game and he played at the edge position. So, you're losing some guys. Your Gums was productive. Sapp really, quite frankly, was a disappointment last year, Zach.
Yeah.
He was a guy that was talking about maybe he had 7.5 sacks, I want to say, the year before. He's thinking he could get to double digits in sacks, and I think he ended up with 1 or 2. And so productivity-wise, that's not a lot to replace. So keeping Jaden Woods obviously was the biggest.
Yeah, so the fact that they got Woods back and Cameron James back are why they didn't go, and LJ McCray, are why they didn't go out and get starter-level transfers from the portal, right? Like that. I mean, it's either if you lost somebody from the portal that was a starter or you lost them to graduation, you either got a guy on the roster that's ready to step in and take over, or you got to go get somebody from the portal. So it kind of goes back to the Burrow situation. I'm sure they would have and wanted to add a nose. That being said, they had already been dealing with that position without him and guys that are already there and ready to start, whether that's Bet. They know who's going to start I'm going to say they know who they got to start at those edge spots with McCray, with James, and with Woods. So you really just needed to replace the numbers, and you only lost two guys, and that was Gums and that was Sapp. So to be able to go out and get the two edge players that you got, Ford.
Yeah, Ford and KJ Ford out of Texas, and Jaraylon McCoy.
Which are two big-time edge guys, man. Like, those are huge signings that the Gators got. So that's why they brought in some edge players and hosted them on campus, Keith. But that both of those guys, that was before Woods decided to come back. I don't know that Florida potentially taking those guys was contingent on what Woods did. But because Woods came back, it kind of it's like a whatever. So that grade really is not applicable, as is linebacker. You lost Grayson Howard, who played 36 snaps last season and ended up at USF. So as productive as he was 2 years ago, there was no production from him this past season. And you didn't graduate anybody either. Like, you only lost Grayson Howard. You brought in Malik Morris. So your numbers are the same, and and the guys that played the most and produced the most, Miles Graham, Jaden Robinson, Aaron Childs, are all back. And then you got the two freshmen, Ty Jackson and Miles Johnson, that are now a year older. So they went after one guy in the portal, Corey Platt Jr., who ended up at Texas Tech, and he's a Houston or Texas native. So not really surprised there, and I'm sure Florida wanted to sign that guy. If he ended up at Texas Tech, he was probably really expensive, and they just didn't have a need at linebacker.
Yeah, you land TJ Bullard, who hasn't played a ton. He's played at UCF. He's played in a lot of games. Mostly he's done his work on special teams, and you got to have those guys too. One thing,
but he's a preferred walk-on from what we understand.
Yeah.
So, that's, again, there was not a need there. Could they have used another linebacker? I'm sure. But I think they're in a good spot there. Cornerback was one where they it wasn't so much what they lost to the portal. I think it was more about what they lost for graduation. Devin Moore was their top graded player on defense last year, consistent, available for him, fortunately. And he had a great year. So you lose him, but to the portal, you lose Jameer Grimsley and Teddy Foster. You bring in Jordy Lowry from East Carolina, and obviously you brought in some signees as well, two 4-star cornerbacks. So this is a position where they definitely didn't. I don't think they upgraded with what they brought in necessarily, but I don't necessarily think that they needed to because of what you return. You got Dijon Johnson back. You got Cormani McClain back. I think Javari Flowers and Ben Hanks III are both going to be pushing for playing time. And they had, to me, which we'll get into here in a second, they had a much bigger need at defensive back, safety, nickel versus corner. They targeted some corners and they ended up taking one, but I don't think Keith that they were going out there and looking for a guy that was going to come in and start. They're starting Cormani McClain opposite Dijon Johnson or one of those other freshmen. They didn't need a transfer corner to come in.
And one of the safeties we have listed, Kanye Clark of UCLA, can play either. Really, he's kind of interchangeable. And there's a few guys like that. When we talk about the safety, some of those guys can play nickel. Some of those guys can play boundary safety. So position versatility within your position group also is so valuable. All right. So you want to talk about safeties now?
Yeah. This to me was the biggest need on defense by far. You needed to, you had some other guys that left, but this was where they lost the most starters and the most production. Jordan Castell, Sharif Denson, Aaron Gates, and then a reserve, Josiah Davis, who's only one of two guys that has not, at least unless I missed it, one of two guys that still hasn't found a school yet. So the Gators lost 4 defensive back, safety / nickel players, and they brought in 4, including the junior college transfer. Now he might count with the high school crop, but he was still a guy that they brought in during this portal cycle where they were losing guys and trying to bring in guys. So, but the guys from the portal, DJ Coleman, Cam Dooley, Kanye Clark, who Keith just mentioned, can play corner, can play nickel, can play safety if needed. He's got some versatility, but the big signings are Cam Dooley and DJ Coleman, without a doubt. I mean, Cam Dooley should step right in and start at free safety and take over Jordan Castell's position. We were very high on him in the On3 rankings. He was 123rd nationally. He was 262 in the industry, but On3 was very high on him. Even higher on DJ Coleman. He was 243 in the industry rankings, the transfer portal industry rankings, but DJ Coleman was ranked 62 nationally by On3. So we were very high on both of the top safeties that the Gators signed. I would assume that DJ Coleman is probably going to be a guy, Keith, that could maybe compete for that nickel spot. However, maybe he's also a guy that maybe plays strong safety. Do you move Bryce Thornton to nickel? Because he's played there before. He can play there. Would he want to do that for his senior year versus staying at safety? I don't know that. But those are that is the spot that we did. Like I'm almost positive that Cam Dooley is going to start at free safety, and I think that was 100% an upgrade from Jordan Castell. However, nickel, I don't know. I mean, I like the 2 nickels that the Gators had, Denson and Gates. I like Gates more, but he had the injury issues. We don't know, at least I don't know, who's going to necessarily start there. Is it going to be Alfonso Allen, who's now on scholarship at Florida? Is it going to be DJ Coleman? Is it going to be Lagonza Hayward? That is going to be one of the most competitive and wide open battles, I think, in camp, Keith. Nickel.
Well, the 2 things to note about DJ Coleman and Cam Dooley. DJ Coleman was Florida's first transfer commitment.
That's right.
They got him early. He was on campus. In other words,
they wanted him.
And then Cam Dooley comes from Kentucky. Well, who else comes from Kentucky? Your defensive coordinator, Brad White, and your defensive backs coach, safeties coach, Chris Collins. I hope I'm getting, sometimes I get my, and so, okay, so they probably knew which guy in that Kentucky defensive backfield they wanted. But Cam Dooley's a kid from Alabama that was a 4-star recruit that Kentucky was able to get up there. Heck of a job, by the way, to get him out of Alabama. He's from a place I think called Valley, which is just outside Auburn. And so, a guy that's doing this, you're looking for upward projection guys. Like, he's a younger guy. He's not just a plug and play 1-year guy. He's a guy that you might be able to get a couple of years out of before he goes off to the NFL, and they see the upside in him. So for Florida, those were 2 guys that were clearly targeted by them, 2 guys they clearly wanted really badly. And that's why they had a huge need there, but they also knew there was potential. DJ Coleman's productivity has gone up each year, and Cam Dooley really moved into a more prominent role last season, and by the end of the season was one of Kentucky's more valuable defenders. And again, he's on an upward path. So 2 guys to really be excited about, I think, Zach.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that was, again, one of their biggest needs. I think they knocked it out of the park there. And, still got to see what they end up doing along the defensive line and that nickel.
Yeah.
But I think we know what they're going to do at edge, or what they have to work with. Know what they have to work with at linebacker. Know what they have to work with at corner. Nickel and defensive line, I think, is still TBD.
Overall, plus or minus on your defensive pickups versus your defensive losses. What do you think?
Well, that's a great question. I think the best way that I would probably look at that is, what was the most important needs and what was the least important. So I think their most important need was safety. They upgraded. I think the second most important need, defensive line, is probably a wash. I think after that, corner, I don't necessarily. I mean, I don't think they upgraded, but I don't think they needed to. And then I would say edge and linebacker were kind of not applicable. So it's really three needs. So it, kind of a wash, but the most important need, in my opinion, they upgraded. So I guess that's what matters the most.
Yeah, and they also retained the guys outside of Burrow that they really needed to retain. Now I think Sharif Denson, Aaron Gates, they could
have lost Brendan Bett.
That's right.
We should mention that.
Yeah, could have lost Brendan Bett, but they're gonna have to figure out what to do with that nickel position. We'll see. On offense, Zach, we'll start at running back since you want to save quarterbacks for last. Transferred out Jacoby Jackson, Katie Daniels, Treyon Webb, Chad Gasper. Transferred in Evan Pryor of Cincinnati, formerly of Ohio State, and London Montgomery of East Carolina, and I think he's formerly of Penn State. And you also, the big one, obviously, retained Jaden Ball. I mean, that was everything. You also have Duke Clark coming back and Byron Lewis coming back. So they needed to. They were losing some decent players. I mean, Katie Daniels saw a lot of action last year when Jacoby Jackson was hurt, and Jacoby Jackson, when he was healthy a couple of years ago, was solid. Treyon Webb, unfortunately, has just had so many injuries the last few years. We've never really seen what he can do. But they brought in a couple guys that are pretty highly rated guys and pretty well thought of, Zach.
I'm going to go out and say right now that I think they upgraded here.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I think that it was really, no disrespect, but it was really two guys and their production that you were having to replace, because as you said, Treyon Webb has just been injured throughout his career. And I don't know, we don't know what Florida can count on him for. And there's certainly not production that you can hang your hat on. So that's not, one of the pieces that you really needed to replace. And then Chad Gasper has also been, is coming off of the injury and redshirted this past year. So it's really, you had to go out and replace what you got production-wise and practice rep-wise from Jacoby Jackson and Katie Daniels. That's really what it came down to. And Jacoby Jackson a year ago or 2 years ago obviously was a very productive back. This year he had, I guess, an injury that kept him out, but I think he got to a point where he had made the decision to just sit out and preserve his year, and it was a smart decision by him because he ended up at Ohio State. But he really gave you nothing last year. I mean, he played in some games, but like production-wise, you got more out of KD Daniels than you got out of Jacoby Jackson, and KD Daniels didn't give you a lot. So, I'm not trying to say not either of these guys are talented. Jacoby Jackson obviously is talented because he ended up at Ohio State. But production-wise and availability-wise, he and Katie Daniels did not give you a lot last year. It was the Jaden Ball show. So the question is, can Evan Pryor and London Montgomery step in and give you as much or more than Jacoby Jackson and Katie Daniels were providing? I think they can. In fact, I think Evan Pryor is going to be a great change of pace for Florida's backfield, whereas Jacoby Jackson was a lot like Jaden Ball in terms of the skill set. That was a tongue twister. I think Evan Pryor is going to be a great change of pace. I think he's going to be able to come in and give the Gators something else in the backfield. And look, he comes from some great pedigree, just given that he was at the school that Jacoby Jackson just ended up at. So they lost one back to Ohio State, and they got one that used to play there. But I think he's going to be RB2, and I think London Montgomery should be able to give you as much as Katie Daniels was providing, if not more.
Well, again, Duke Clark, who as a true freshman
let's not forget about him.
He had passed Katie Daniels on the depth chart, and Katie Daniels was really only playing late in the year because Duke Clark was hurt. And, look, if Duke Clark's doing this, there's nothing that says he wouldn't have passed a healthy Jacoby Jackson this year. So I think those guys probably saw the writing on the wall. And I wouldn't rule out Duke Clark either. I think you're right. Can't forget about him. He's a guy that is going to look. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's quick. He's also a change of pace back from Jaden Ball. As good as Jaden Ball is, his longest run last year was like under 30 yards. And so they're going to try to obviously get more explosive plays out of Jaden. And that was, I think that was more of a product of teams could stack the box sack because there was no deep threat last year. But these other guys, Pryor, Montgomery, Duke Clark, and we don't know about Byron Lewis yet because he hadn't had to do much or hadn't done much, but
heard great things though.
Yeah, heard great things. Those guys can, provide some, hopefully for Florida, some longer runs and all that. It's a good group. By the way, Pryor, Montgomery, Clark, these guys catch the ball out of the backfield too, just like Jaden Baugh can. Contribute on special teams. There's a lot of things these guys can do.
And we should also mention too that they were two of Florida's highest rated transfer signees. Evan Pryor was ranked 207th nationally, and London Montgomery 267 nationally. If you're a top 300 transfer out of 3,000 plus guys, you're pretty good.
Yeah. And also, okay, so receiver now. Now, this is an interesting one. Zach, you and I were talking a week or two ago.
I had a debate with my buddy. He's probably going to watch this.
Are you guys on speaking terms again, or what?
No,
okay,
it was a healthy debate, but I took my stance.
All right, so your stance is that Florida has upgraded at receiver, but so let's take a closer look. Here's who's transferred out. Eugene Wilson. Solid player, when healthy. That's a big one there. When healthy. Aiden Mizell, he's gone. Nashawn Montgomery, a promising true freshman last year. He's gone. Muiz Tonkara, promising true freshman last year. He's gone. And Tank Hawkins, fast player, but never was able to really get going at Florida. Transferred in. One big one, Eric Singleton Jr., the number 5 receiver in the transfer portal. Micah May, he's from Auburn. Micah Mays from Wake Forest. Bailey Stockton from Georgia Tech. Jalen Lloyd from Oklahoma State. Didn't do much at Oklahoma State last year, but had 2 productive seasons before that at Nebraska. So really, I mean, I don't know, Zach. This is a tough one because Eric Singleton, obviously one of the top receivers in the country. The guys that got 162 catches in college, a couple thousand yards, is a game-breaking type. He runs a 4.2 40 reportedly, is certainly going to be playing in the NFL. Micah Mays, did some decent things at Wake. Bailey Stockton, kind of a secondary receiver at Georgia Tech. Longest catch is around 30 yards. Jalen Lloyd didn't do much last year. So, you're losing some productivity there. So you tell me why you think they're better off.
So with this group, I looked at it as, and you have to, and here's why. Some of the guys that Florida lost were freshmen. Some of them were redshirted as freshmen. So to me, as I'm judging, did they get better or worse with what they added and with what they lost? I'm including the freshmen.
Okay.
I am. Or at least the top ones.
You mean the freshman coming in right now?
Yeah, I'm Davion Gross is going to play as a freshman, folks. I'm telling you right now, he's going to play. Now, how much he plays, he ain't going to redshirt. So, and he's a big time player. So, this one, part of my, I guess, argument here is that I included the incoming freshmen and judged them against some of the guys that they lost to the portal, but some of them were heads up. Eric Singleton, to me, is better and more proven than Eugene Wilson III. I think Florida, to me, that's where it starts at the top. Eugene Wilson was the top receiver Florida lost. Eric Singleton is the top receiver that Florida brought in. And I think Eric Singleton is better than Eugene Wilson. My buddy debated me on that. My buddy doesn't agree with me on that. And we'll find out, could Eugene Wilson be a victim of being misused and being in an offense that wasn't a good fit for him? Potentially. But Eric Singleton has done more. He hasn't had season-ending injuries. He's been in this offense. He was the number 4 overall player in the portal last year, and now he's in the 30s or in the 20s, 29, I think. But that was – he played at Auburn last year and had no quarterback. He's still the dude that was – highly ranked coming out of Georgia Tech, and now he's back in that offense with that OC. The next guys that I kind of equated, which was Micah Mays and Aiden Mizell. Again, you're talking about a guy in Aiden Mizell that has had availability issues that has throughout his career. He's certainly talented and certainly fast and has made plays, but I think that Micah Mays is an upgrade over him. You could also make the argument for maybe it's a better one with Jalen Lloyd because he's got the track speed. But I like Micah Mays. I think Micah Mays is an upgrade from Aiden Mizell. And then we get into the other territory. Like, this is projecting because I think both of these guys are ex-receivers. And I think Davion Gross is an upgrade from Moise Tunkara, even though Moise played as a freshman and hit the portal and end up elsewhere. Like, Davion Gross is a better player than him. And I mean, Keith, you can chime in on that when I get done here, but I think he is. I'll maybe give that Tank Hawkins is better than Stockton, maybe. But who knows? I mean, who knows? Maybe Stockton comes in and because of his fit in this offense and his experience, he might end up being more productive than what Tank Hawkins would have been. So I don't know. I think Tank Hawkins is probably the better athlete and the better receiver. But I don't know. I said maybe, and I'm looking at the text I sent my buddy. And then last but not least, I think Justin Williams is an upgrade over Nashawn Montgomery. I don't even think that's a question. So again, if you're just going off of the transfers, it's hard to do because they only brought in 4 transfers, technically 5 with the Indiana receiver, but he's a preferred walk-on. Yeah. And they lost 5. Okay. So, but I think it's an upgrade, especially when you consider and I didn't even mention Marquez Daniel, but the totality of it, I think they're better off at receiver.
Another guy, TJ Abrams, is a guy that really started to come on late in the season last year. I think we're going to see more and more of him as well as an explosive playmaker. You're right. Davion Gross has got some real playmaking ability. He can do a lot of things. He's dangerous after the catch. He's dangerous deep. Eric Singleton, again, you have to factor in games played versus games missed. And so I think he's better than Eugene Wilson. Even I think, and then you factor in he plays every week. And I'm not making fun of Eugene Wilson, but he's been hurt a lot. He is. I mean, the guy's been hurt a lot. Yeah. And hopefully, I hope, because quite frankly, he's a pretty good dude. I hope he's never hurt again. I hope he plays every game that he could play for the rest of his life. But he's been hurt a lot. And so based on that alone, on those two things, who do you think's better just straight up? I mean, Eric Singleton is probably faster than Eugene Wilson, believe it or not. He's got more wiggle than Eugene Wilson. He is an elite route runner per our analysts at On3 and others. And so why did his yards per catch go down last year? Well, receiving has kind of changed, man. You know, you're catching a lot of bubble screens these days. So when you average 9 yards a catch, and Eugene Wilson found this out, that you're earning all 9 yards. This isn't you're catching it 14 yards downfield and a guy tackling you after 6 inches. You're having to earn it. But I think in Buster Faulkner's offenses at Georgia Tech, who he played for 2 years, Eric Singleton averaged 14.5 and 13.5 yards per catch. You get him up to that level again at 50 catches in a season, and you've got something special to complement those other guys.
And look, if they did not get Eric Singleton, they would not have upgraded that receiver.
No, that was the key to everything. And we talked about it, Zach, a few weeks ago. We said, hey, they're not spending a lot of money at receiver. Mays, Stockton, maybe they're saving money for somebody. And then the next day they got Eric Singleton, who did not come cheap, by the way. All right, one other guy. I think Justin Williams is going to be the best of the freshman receivers.
So you agree with me? That's if you're comparing him to Nashawn, it's up.
Well, I think they're sort of. I mean, I know they're going to maybe play the same position, but I think they're different types of receivers.
Sure.
Justin Williams is Nashawn Montgomery's a polished route runner, great hands, but he's a little wiry. Justin Williams is a little bit more solidly put together, and the fact that he rushed for something like 1,700 yards the last couple years total tells you how physical he is. So I love that guy. All right, next position, Zach. And let's see. We're going to do tight ends. Out Hayden Hansen, everybody's favorite player, Tony Livingston, and Cameron Kosman. In Luke Harpering of Georgia Tech, Lakota Dupree of James Madison.
Oh, and then there's the Evan Chica as well.
Evan Chica of New Haven. Yeah, I was looking at the list. Evan Chica of New Haven, who, by the way, we're thinking New Haven. I've never even heard that New Haven's got a program. Well, schools like LSU are interested in him. So a guy they think was a pretty good find. And I think he was one of those guys, by the way, Zach. Our boys, Zach, Corey Bender and Blake Alderman were communicating with Evan before, during, and after his Florida visit, and it was really kept under wraps. I mean, he told them, hey, Florida kind of wanted to keep that. I'm not giving too much away, but Florida really wanted to keep that visit quiet, Zach, because they thought they had something in him, right? That's pretty telling there. So, again, you lose experience in Hayden Hanston. You lose experience in Tony Livingston. Kosman was a freshman last year, didn't play. It's hard to know. It's hard to know with these guys.
Yeah, this one, I definitely can't say that they upgraded here, but I don't know that they won't. You know what I mean? But it just like there's not enough of a sample size for you to, at least for me to say that they got better. I think had they, as much as I know fans weren't crazy about him either, but like if they would have had Tony Livingston back, at least that gives you some more production. And he did more this year, but with him and Hayden Hansen, again, they're going to get starters out of one of these guys. And obviously Amir Jackson, we need to mention, enter the portal or wanted to enter the portal and then decided to re-sign with the Gators. They brought him back. He is one of the premier players at this position, or at least should be. So, I feel like the Georgia Tech tight end could be the guy there, Keith, that maybe emerges. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Or either him or probably the James Madison guy.
Yeah, I actually think they upgraded. I mean, again, you're losing snaps and productivity out of Hansen. We have people on the message boards at Gators Online say, hey, you guys can make fun of Hansen all you want. He's going to be playing on Sundays. And that may be true. But look, Luke Harpring was a young guy at Georgia Tech that showed a lot of promise in year one, former 4-star recruit. Got the bloodlines. I think his dad played basketball at Georgia Tech and was a great player. Lakota Dupree, I remember when he committed to Florida out of James Madison, of all people, former Florida assistant Tim Brewster, who noted tight ends guru, tweeted something that said, hey, they got a real one in this guy. He's going to surprise a lot of people. He can do a lot of different things. He can not only line up at tight end, in, out, he can also line up at fullback. And so we'll see. And then, the Chika kid from New Haven, again, that's one of those, that's a position where you're not going to, that's a position where you can actually find a steal at a school that you've never heard of before, because it's such a developmental position. And the NFL is full of rosters with kids at tight end from schools you haven't really heard of. So I think they probably upgraded. I mean, we know what Livingston, we know what they were going to get out of those guys. I think they were tapped out ceiling wise, quite frankly. Whereas Harpring's young, Dupree.
I agree with that.
Dupree started at Charlotte, got to James Madison. He's like taking steps, bigger programs each year. And then the kid from New Haven, Chika. So I think they're going to be a little bit better. That's me personally. But again, I don't necessarily know. The offense that Buster Faulkner ran at Georgia Tech, everybody to a man tells Zach and I, it's not going to be the offense we see at Florida. I mean, they're going to utilize everybody. So we don't necessarily know what the plan is for tight end yet, but they had to bring some in. And then obviously you got Amir Jackson, who's a true pass catcher and an athletic guy and again, it should be telling they work to keep him on campus and to keep him at Florida. And Buster Faulkner, being from Georgia Tech, knew all about Amir Jackson, who's from Portal, Georgia, which if you don't know is a few hours outside of Atlanta down on the way to Savannah. So Buster Faulkner surely knows all about Amir Jackson and what his capabilities are. So I think that's an upgrade. Offensive line, Zach. This is an interesting one because you've got to factor in who's out, who's in, but then also the graduation losses. So who's out? Devin Manuel, Marcus Maskell, young player, Noel Portageon, Enoch Wangoy, those guys are gone. Transferred in, TJ Shanahan, part-time starter at Penn State. Egan Boyer, projected starting left tackle for Penn State in 2026. Emeka Agorji, a starter at Stanford as a freshman last year. And Harrison Moore at a tackle and guard. Harrison Moore, Georgia Tech starting center. So maybe out of these four, Zach, you might have 3 or 4 starters. Now, you do lose Austin Barber, your all-conference left tackle. You do lose, I should mention him first, Jake Slaughter, your All-American center. And you do lose Damian George which guard was he? Right guard?
Right guard, yeah.
Okay. So you're losing some pretty decent players here. You bring back Caden Jones.
Yeah.
You bring back him and some other tackles. But, I mean, to me, I'm doing all the talking here for you. Of the guys you brought in versus the guys that transferred out, it's a no-brainer. I mean, those guys weren't doing anything, and these guys have all been starters. The question is now, when you factor in the Slaughter loss, the Barber loss, and the George loss, are you better off on the offensive line?
Correct.
And we don't know yet.
Correct. Because, again, it goes back to what we were talking about with the defensive line and on the defensive side of the ball. If you're losing a starter via the transfer portal or via graduation, how are you replacing them? Is there a guy that's waiting in the wings, ready to step in, or do you have to go get somebody out of the portal that you can plug in? And at center with Jake Slaughter, I think while everybody probably assumed that Jason Zandamela would be the guy to step in, you don't necessarily know how he's going to play or if he's going to avoid a potential drop-off from the level that Jake Slaughter played at. So while everybody probably had Zandamela pegged as the next center, now he's got competition with Harrison Moore, and it very well could be him. Austin Barber, there was not, unlike Jason Zandamela, at least in my opinion, there's not an obvious left tackle on the roster that you're ready to just send in there. I mean, Fletcher Westfall, I think they signed to be a potential future left tackle, but he was hurt all last year and didn't play and didn't get to have that development that he needed to where I think he would be ready to do that. So you needed to go out and get a tackle that you could start potentially and replace Barber with. And I think we all think that that's probably going to be Boyer. And then last but not least, you lost Damian George. I think that most people probably felt like Rod Kearney may very well be next in line there. However, you've now added some guys in TJ Shanahan and some of these other linemen that could give him a run for his money there. And then you bring back Najee Harris at left guard. So from that standpoint, I think they're in a good spot. Just specifically on portal losses and portal additions, it's upgraded for sure. I mean, the Shanahan, Boyer, Amika, and Harrison Ford are 100% upgrades over Manuel, Maskell, Portajagan, and Wagnoy. But like you said, you got to factor in what you lost as well to the senior graduation.
I think, did you call him Harrison Ford?
No, Harrison Moore.
Okay. Maybe it's my ears. All right. So, I agree 100% with everything you just said, Zach. And here's my question to you. I don't know whether the ceiling is going to be better on the offensive line, but I definitely think the floor is going to be better. But my question to you is, if the Napier staff is still here, do they go make these moves, or do they ride like they did last year? Do they ride with their player development wisdom?
I mean, listen, if the staff is still here, the two Penn State linemen are not at Florida right now, and I don't think you'd have Harrison Moore either to come in.
Well, how aggressively do you think they would have been? I guess would have been my question. Or do you think they would have relied on their player development?
No, I think they would have known that they would have had to go out and get a tackle. But if you're not gonna go spend on that, which look a top dollar left tackle in the portal is $2 million, maybe more. You got to have a guy that you either feel like you got on the roster or that you can go get, that you're confident enough and know enough about to feel like, hey, this guy. And so you just got a unique situation with Phil Trotwine where he had coached and developed and recruited this guy where he can say, hey, he is 100% a future starter at offensive tackle. And you were able to bring him in and not spend maybe what you would have had to for other positions. But that was a unique situation where you're trusting the judgment of your offensive line coach. And again, it's a new one, so that wouldn't have happened if you would have had the previous staff in place.
All right, before we get to quarterback, I just want to go over special teams real quick. You lost Trey Smack, your place kicker, off to the pros. You lost your punter, Tommy Doman, off to the pros. But you picked up Patrick Durkin, an outstanding kicker from Tulane. You picked up Alec Clark, an outstanding punter from Tulane. And then you got a bunch of specialists out there too. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Zach, but they did lose some young players to the transfer portal, but they were backups last year. Evan Noel, a kicker, and some other guys. But overall, I think they feel like they went out and got experience. They got proven commodities at long snapper, at punter, at place kicker, whereas the guys that Florida had promise, like Evan Noel at place kicker, but he hadn't had to do it yet. So I think that's an upgrade. Would you agree with that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be hard to upgrade from Trey Smack, but
well, I mean, upgrade from what you lost out of in the portal.
Correct.
The unknown versus the known.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And Patrick Durkin obviously was big time. Alex Clark is big time, and the guys that they lost to the portal while they were highly touted coming out of high school, they were both freshmen that redshirted last year. So we haven't seen them. And Durkin and Clark are certainly upgrades from that standpoint. Can Durkin be as good as Smack? We'll see, but he was damn good at Tulane.
That's right.
And Clark obviously did his thing at punter as well. I think honestly the hardest guy to replace might be Rocco Underwood, just because of how good he was. But they brought in the Carter Milron, or I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but he's certainly a guy that's an experienced long snapper, has history with John Summerall, and they feel like he's going to be able to come in and take over that long snapper job. So they're in a good place on those spots. But as we all know, Keith, the most important position in all sports is quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, and so you lose DJ Lagway to the transfer portal. He's ended up at Baylor where his dad played. But you gain Aaron Philo, backup at Georgia Tech. But he was a backup to a guy that finished 10th in the voting for the Heisman Trophy last year, Haynes King, and he played 2 seasons at Georgia Tech under offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner, who is now the offensive coordinator at Florida. So Buster Faulkner knew who they wanted. That was the guy. Like you mentioned earlier, John Summerall said he did his homework too. They could have had other guys, and they could have signed more guys. Remember, the plan at one time was maybe to bring in a couple of guys. But I think when you bring in a guy like Aaron Philo, quarterbacks all talk, and so do their parents. And I think people probably looked at that and said, well, I don't know. They already got his guy, Aaron Philo. Maybe we need to go look at some other schools. But what do you think about this whole thing, Zach? This is interesting. You're giving up a guy that started a lot of games versus a guy that hadn't started too many games. But, boy, he's, everybody we've talked to says good things about Aaron Philo.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating discussion to talk about whether or not the Gators upgraded or downgraded here because of both sides, right? Because like you want to say obviously that DJ should be better and more proven, and he's obviously higher ranked in the portal than Philo, which we'll get into that here in a second. But like, what have you done for me lately? Like the last that we've seen of DJ Lagway was not a good season. And so even though he's, experienced, it's like a comment John Summerall made when discussing the quarterback spot. There's a lot of guys that have experience that aren't very good. Now, I don't necessarily know that DJ, we can say that he's not going to end up being good, but he certainly wasn't good last year. So, but at the same time, like, you're looking ahead as to what he could be with a new offense, with a full year with a full off season, injury free. I mean, that's a lot of ifs. But that's why, to me, you can't just say slam dunk for sure DJ's better and Florida's worse off because of how he played. But at the same time, Aaron Philo, as much pedigree as he has, and as much as there's been great things about him, there's just been so little that we've got to see from him for good reason. It's not like it's because he wasn't doing his thing at Georgia Tech. He's just behind a stud at quarterback. And as John Summerall said, he was definitely the guy that they wanted to be QB1 in 2026. So to me, this situation is TBD because we don't know how Aaron Philo is going to look in a starting role at the University of Florida in the SEC. And we also don't know how DJ Lagway is going to respond at Baylor. like if he goes to Baylor and lights it up, there's going to be some fans that think in the back of their head, like, man, we wish we could have kept that guy. But we got to acknowledge too, there's a difference between going to play for Baylor and going to play in the SEC.
Yeah,
there's one thing. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
There's one. Well, I mean, I could get long-winded. What were you going to say? Because
we're also comparing Lagway to Philo when Tramel Jones might have something to say about this before all is said and done too.
That too. The other thing that I mentioned on the story that I wrote about this week, based on John's comments, but like again, it goes back to the discussion of, okay, well, once you lost DJ Lagway, well, who are you going to go get? And if not Philo, well, then who? Like, I know that there's some fans that maybe weren't crazy about that name when they first heard it because he's a backup, or maybe there's somebody else that you wanted. I mean, maybe, but who? Like, you go through the rankings, right? I mean, Philo is ranked 180th nationally. I think there's about 16 or 17 quarterbacks ahead of him. Okay, before those guys were following their coach to their next school. They were not coming to Florida, or they were not going anywhere else, right? Eric Morris, who brought his quarterback from North Texas, Alex Golish brought his quarterback, Matt Campbell, and James Franklin. All these guys brought their quarterback, so you weren't getting them. Unless you wanted to go out and spend multi-million-dollar NIL deals on Sam Levitt or Brendan Sorsby or Dylan Raiola, to me, like, that's it. Like, if you want to argue that Florida should have got one of those guys, that's fine. I don't think Raiola is probably worth, and I don't know how many fans even wanted him. Sorsby or Levitt, I mean, Sorsby got $5 million to go to Texas Tech, reportedly. I don't know what Levitt got, but it was a lot. Was Florida, after the DJ Lagway experience where they spent millions and millions of dollars to bring him to Gainesville and did not get their ROI, they did not get a return on investment, like, were they going to go and spend crazy again in the portal for a quarterback? Like, I don't think so. You can argue that they should have. That's fine. But to me, that's it. Austin Simmons was not coming here, who transferred to Missouri. He burned his bridge that could have led to Gainesville a long time ago. And then outside of that, Keith, like, there's 3 guys that ended up at SEC schools that are ranked ahead of Philo, other than Austin Simmons. They're all dual threat guys.
Yeah.
They all don't have history with Faulkner and have played in his offense. I can understand why Buster and the staff wanted to go over Philo over some of those 3 guys that ended up. I think it was at one of them went to Kentucky, one of them went to Auburn, and one of them went to LSU. Obviously, Kiffin got 2 of those guys. And maybe the one that came from USC to LSU, you can argue Florida should went and got him. I don't think that they were going to do that when you're bringing your OC from Georgia Tech, and he's got a guy in Philo who, by the way, still ranked very high, 180th nationally. Yeah. And then last but not least, Keith, like the guys that ended up also there ahead of him. One of them ended up at Arizona State. One of them ended up at Northwestern. One of them ended up at Virginia, Louisville, and Illinois. Like, look where they landed. Like, there's not a guy there that was an obvious guy that Florida should have gone to go get. So, I mean, I can understand where the Gators landed where they did at quarterback, and I honestly feel like they probably are better than maybe folks realize. But that's still to be determined. We're going to have to see that.
I think they went and got the guy that was the guy they wanted. I think that their rankings – look, I mean, I love rankings, okay? I grew up in that world. But schools, when they're putting their boards together, they're not looking at On3's rankings. They're going for skill set, who fits what we as a program want to do, who knows our terminology. Now, he played for Buster Faulkner and Philo, but again, we mentioned that the offense is going to change significantly, but the terminology is going to stay the same. So I think when they factored in all of that, it was a no-brainer. I mean, Zach, we didn't even really hear about them pursuing other guys.
No.
Okay. A couple of guys you mentioned, Austin Simmons. Well, he had his shot at Ole Miss last year, and quite frankly, wasn't very good. All right? Yeah. He got hurt. Chambliss came in. Does anybody watching think Ole Miss makes the semifinals
with Austin Simmons as their quarterback? Yeah.
He was okay. That's it. He was okay. They weren't. And Sorsby, some people have taken a look at what he did at Cincinnati last year. I read an article this week, and they broke down some of his real metrics against quality teams, and they ain't that good. Okay, now you could say, okay, these guys have experience, but Austin Simmons does not have more experience than Aaron Philo does. He does not. It's about the same. And so I think that Florida looked at this at the big picture, and that this is the guy that they think fits everything.
One reason we mentioned Austin Simmons is because he's from Florida. So people said, well, go bring him back, and he was committed, but he burned that bridge.
Well, and where did Buster Faulkner work before Georgia Tech? At Georgia. He didn't just coach Aaron Philo the last 2 years. Again, by the way, I don't know how good Aaron Philo is going to be. I'm just saying we're making the argument. He may be great. He may not be. We nobody knows. Buster Faulkner doesn't know. He thinks, and he's got evidence that we don't have. But he coached at Georgia. He's been following Aaron Philo since well before he started coaching him. He was a guy that was that saw him all through high school. He went to high school at Prince Avenue Christian, which is just down the road from Athens. He's known about him for a long time. He knows what progressions he's made as a quarterback and hasn't made. He knows his strengths better than anyone. He knows his weaknesses better than anyone. And let me give you one other thing here. Do we really think Eric Singleton, who easily could have gone to the NFL, supposedly fourth, fifth round draft pick at worst, do we think that he stops that he pulls out of the NFL draft to sign with Florida if he doesn't have confidence that Florida, that Buster Faulkner, that Aaron Philo, that Marcus Davis, the receivers coach, can get him to a higher grade for next year? Well, you don't do that if you don't have some confidence and belief in the guy that's going to be throwing you the football. And again, who he played with for a year at Georgia Tech before he transferred to Auburn. And so you have to put all this together. And I think Florida feels really good. Now, look, he's still got to go out and do it. That's the one thing that people say. Everybody that we know coaches at other programs, people, staffers, they all either, if they didn't work at Georgia Tech, they know people who did, and the feedback, and I know defensive staffers at Tech, and they all say the same thing. This guy's the real deal, but he's still got to go out there as the guy. Okay, so we get that. But in terms of projection, Buster Faulkner, John Summerall, and the rest of the Florida staff, they think they've got what a real one, as they say, right? So we'll see. Again, he's got to go out and win the job first. That may be the hardest part. He's got to win the job. I know he's got a head start over Tramel Jones, but Tramel Jones is going to work his tail off. He's a smart kid. He's an athletic kid. He's got a big arm, and he has a lot of friends on the team. They're going to be in his corner. They're not going to root for a guy to be in. I don't mean it that way, but I mean they're going to. He's already the locker room guys. The locker room likes him already, right? And so Aaron Fowler is a new guy coming in. He's impressed people with his work ethic so far. They like him too, but he's got his work cut out to win the job. But if he can win the job, then we just got to see what he does as the starting guy. But the ability supposedly is there. And you look at all the weapons, Zach. Haynes King was a great college player, but he's not a guy that you think is going to be throwing for a lot of yards if he can make an NFL team, right? He's not a passer. He's a runner. He's a 50-50 guy. Aaron Fowler is a passer. And you start looking at, look at who he's going to be throwing to. Look at who he's going to be handing off to. If they can complete deep balls, what does that do for Jaden Baugh? If these tight ends get involved, what does that do for the receivers? So there's a lot to like in his ability to be a distributor. And what did John Summerall say that first day? They want to get up and down the field. That's what Florida does. That's what Florida does. That's what Florida hadn't done the last few years, unfortunately.
Well, and then to put a bow on this, and then we'll talk hoops real quick. I do think while defense, I think they upgraded at their most important position. Some of the other ones, maybe not necessarily. I definitely think that overall on offense they upgraded. I think they did at receiver for sure. I think they did at running back, at least certainly with portal losses and additions they did at the offensive line. I think whether or not they're still as good as a starting lineup, that's to be determined also by some of their returners. And then look, I think quarterback and wide receiver are to be determined, but I'm like you, Keith, I probably lean more toward I think that the Gators will end up being better off at quarterback and tight end than when they were, but I still think it's TBD. But overall, because of running back, because of receiver and offensive line, I think as a whole, as a unit, I think they upgraded with what they brought in from the portal on offense.
I would agree with you. And I hope DJ Lagway does great. I'm not one of these
Me
haters
too.
here. I hope he does great. He was nothing but, Zach, you and I spent
I
time
lean
with him.
more. I lean more toward that because of what I think Philo
Yeah,
could do in Buster's
that's
offense.
right. We tend to. It's not always just who's better. Lagway may go out to Baylor and light it up, but would he have fit?
Yeah.
Would he have fit in this system? We don't know. So, all right. So, ready to talk some hoops? Ready to close it up with some basketball, Zach?
Yeah, man. Obviously, a big
What
one
a
on
wild,
Saturday.
what a wild week! Last Saturday, you in between interviewing John Summerall, you watched Florida lose at home to Auburn. Kind of a shocking game. Florida just doesn't lose at home very often, and when they do, well, we'll see. Maybe Auburn will end up being really good, but it was a surprising loss. Then they turn around on Wednesday night and absolutely just demolished South Carolina. I think it was it the biggest home win ever in SEC
Biggest
play?
away win.
Away win ever in SEC play for the Gators.
Yep.
Just an absolute
by 12 points before the largest margin of victory was 35. It was 47.
South Carolina might be making a coaching change in the near future. But all right, so Florida's 15-6. Net ranking is still high, probably in that 4 or 5 seed range for the NCAA tournament. That's good. That's where you look. If you're not a number one, that's not bad. 6-2 in the SEC, so an SEC title, which whatever, it still means something to some people. That's still very much in play. But they got a big game Saturday, and again, some drama involved as Florida gets ready to host Alabama in a top 25 matchup. Charles Bediako, former professional basketball player, is going to be suiting up for the Tide again. There's just a lot going on here. But, hey, look, it's drawing eyeballs to college basketball in the SEC, Zach. But this is a big game because they've got a decent stretch, a tough stretch of games coming up here. And they already lost one at home. They really, if you want to win the SEC, you probably losing this one's going to hurt, would hurt.
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you can get this one and obviously keep it going, you're going to set yourself up to win the league, which is obviously a goal for this team. It's something that as talented and accomplished and legendary as last year's team was, that was the one thing that they didn't do, was they didn't win the SEC regular season title. Came close. And I tell you what, if this team can do that, given what they went through in non-conference and the ups and downs and more downs, obviously, that they went through, that'd be quite the turnaround and quite the success story for Todd Golden and the squad. And that starts on Saturday, or should I say continues. They got to be able to, I think, shut down Alabama with their bigs. I mean, that's obviously going to be the battle there. That's why they got Charles Bediako to see if he can come in and, give them a step there. But I'm really interested to see the battles that we'll get to watch between Florida's offense and Alabama's defense, because it is good on good, as they like to say. I mean, Alabama's very, very good offensively. They average 92 points per game. However, the Gators are also very good on defense. They rank third in the SEC. They're only giving up 71 points per game. So that's going to be a big-time matchup. But then on the other side, Florida's offense has obviously been very good. They're averaging 85 points per game. However, Alabama's defense has not been good this year. They rank dead last in the SEC.
Wow.
They're giving up 81 points per game. So, I mean, this is an opportunity for the Gators at home, coming off of a game where they just lit up the scoreboard, to really put it on an Alabama squad that's not very good on defense, but is very good on offense. So can the Gators, with that good-on-good matchup defensively, can they hold their own and allow their offense to have a big day on the other end? That's certainly what I'll be watching for Saturday.
Yeah, the game, we keep saying Saturday. Is the game Sunday?
Sunday, excuse me.
I said Saturday. I think
it's always Saturday, so that's why it's ingrained in my head. At 1 p.m.
1 p.m. at the O-Dome versus number 23 Alabama. And it's important because look who's coming up. Florida gets a week off. Then next Saturday travels to Texas A&M. So the winner of that game is really going to have an edge to win the championship in the conference. Then the following week at Georgia. And I know Florida blew out Georgia at home, but Georgia's a solid offensive team, a very high-scoring team. You're going to have to go there. That's going to be a tough place to play. And then on February 14th, you've got Kentucky at Florida. So this is an important 4-game stretch. If Florida gets out of this 4-0, it could be that they're well on their way to winning the SEC championship. But boy, you better win there we go again. You better win Sunday, and then that Texas A&M game. Yeah, this weekend. That Texas A&M game next weekend, and then that game at Georgia are key. Kentucky, boy. I mean, at home, I feel good about Florida's chances. I mean, what just happened to them the other day, losing to Vanderbilt as bad as they did? They're struggling. They were playing well, then they're not playing. I mean, that is just a roller coaster ride. And then then there's a couple of breathers, but then you got to go to Ole Miss, you got to go to Texas, and I know Ole Miss isn't good, but road games are road games. Texas's record is not very good at all, but yet they have a couple quality wins. Then you've got Arkansas at home, so there aren't too many let-ups. But this weekend's game is really one we're going to – the next 2 weekends, Alabama and then A&M, 2 big ones. Zach, this matchup inside Bediako, 7-foot guy versus Chinyelu, Condon, Hal's going to be in there. There's a lot inside. That's where the action's going to be. But these Florida guys, they're going to have to make some shots from the outside, aren't they?
Well, I'll say this though, Keith. I mean, I do wonder if Florida has gotten to the point where they've started to turn a corner from three. I don't necessarily think that they're a great they're going to ever be a great 3-pointing shooting team this year. However, they have made 9 threes in 4 of their last 6 games. And obviously the game that they had against South Carolina, that was their best 3-point shooting percentage of the season. So now they've done that without Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan and Alex Condon hitting from 3. It's really been the Urban Klavzar and Tommy Hauck show beyond the arc. If the Gators can start getting their other guards and certainly Condon to hit some threes as well, I mean, this team's going to be unstoppable. Now, that's everybody firing on all cylinders and having a perfect game, which we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen that game where the Gators go out and get huge nights from Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee. There's been times where both of them have provided it, but not at the same time. Although I'll give them credit, man. They combined for 15 assists in that South Carolina game. Xavier Lee had a season-high 9. He had twice as many assists as South Carolina had as a whole team. They only had 4. So that was probably one of the storylines from that game. The Gators with 28 assists, the most they've had in an SEC game, Keith, in 3 decades at least.
I cringe. I'm sorry. I cringe every time I see Condon shoot a 3. They're not wildly off target, but it's the same thing every time. They all hit the front of the rim every single time.
What's unfortunate is he was shooting at 32% or something like that last year. Like he's down to 14%. He's just completely fell off. And he came back to be a better 3-point shooter. So he came back to shoot probably just at the same clip, Keith, but then just shoot more threes and make more. And but again, that they figured out, I think, a good formula for him on Wednesday because he almost had a triple-double in that game.
All right, that'll do it. Zach's got to run. This edition of the Gators Online Show is a wrap. For Zach Albaverdi, I am Keith Niebuhr. We appreciate all of you stopping by. I hope you have a safe weekend. Enjoy the Gator game on Sunday at 1 p.m. at the O-Dome. Take care, everybody, and we'll do it again soon.